The 70s web shooters. In 1977, we got to see the first live-action portrayal of Spider-Man in the Amazing Spider-Man television series, with Nicholas Hammond playing Peter Parker, a university student who managed to manufacture his own web shooters and web fluid. These web shooters resembled bulky bracelets with cartridges in the shape of blocks, an oversized button placed in the center of his palm, and an awkward nozzle sticking out. Even though the webs shot from these web shooters weren't the most aesthetically pleasing and sometimes looked like ropes painted white, they still managed to get the job done. In addition to the massive cartridges on his forearms, Spider-Man also carried extra cartridges on his belt. Japanese web shooters. In the Japanese adaptation, we were introduced to the Spider Bracelet, a piece of alien technology used by Takuya Yamashiro, who is also known as Japanese Spider-Man. Despite his suit looking quite similar to his comic counterpart, this adaptation of the wall crawler was unique and didn't follow the source material. Instead, it adopted a Power Rangers-like style and tone. The traditional web shooters were replaced with the multifunctional Spider Bracelet, which allowed Takuya to store his Spider-Man suit, shoot a variety of webs, and even summon a giant mech. Organic web shooters. In 2002, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man debuted on the big screen with Tobey Maguire as the main protagonist. After Peter Parker was bitten by a genetically modified spider, he developed spider silk glands, allowing him to produce and shoot organic webs from his wrists. Unlike previous and future adaptations of Spider-Man, this version of the character didn't rely on mechanical web shooters, which didn't sit well with some fans, as they were used to seeing Spider-Man utilize his intelligence and whatever materials he had available to create his own web fluid. Fun fact, there was supposed to be a scene in which Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man created his own web shooters, but it ended up being removed in favor of organic webs. Mark Webb's web shooters. In the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which were Mark Webb's adaptation of the character, Peter Parker, played by Andrew Garfield this time, made his own web shooters using watch parts, which perfectly demonstrated Spider-Man's intelligence and resourcefulness. These web shooters had a sleek design with the leather strap and a screen that displayed how much web fluid was left. However, Peter didn't have to invent the fluid himself, since Oscorp had already created it in the form of biocables, which were stated to be 10 times stronger than steel. Oscorp produced these biocables using radioactive spiders, the same one that later bit Peter and gave him his powers. In the second movie, Peter used a new pair of web shooters with a hexagonal shape. They were vulnerable to Electro's currents until Gwen Stacy magnetized them. Official art for the movie also revealed that these web shooters were meant to include an MP3 player, though it was never shown in the films. MCU web shooters. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man is portrayed by Tom Holland. This version of Peter Parker is extremely smart and managed to develop his own web fluid using basic equipment from his high school chemistry lab. Once created, the fluid was stored in small bottles that Peter hid under school lockers for easy access. He also built his first set of web shooters using cheap materials and scraps. While these web shooters were functional, they could be easily detached from his wrists, which could leave him vulnerable in battle. Peter later received a new suit and a pair of web shooters from Tony Stark, which were a major upgrade compared to his homemade versions. These advanced web shooters featured a built-in spider signal and over 500 web combinations, including web ricochet and web grenades. Peter even used these web shooters alongside the stealth suit provided by S.H.I.E.L.D. After losing the stealth suit to the police, Peter used the Stark Industries fabricator to make a new suit with integrated web shooters and manual activation of the taser webs. The Iron Spider armor also came equipped with its own nanotech-based web shooters, which could automatically refill with web fluid. Following the arrival of the multiversal villains, these web shooters were enchanted by Doctor Strange, granting them the ability to fire mystical webs capable of teleporting individuals into special containment cells. Spider-Verse web shooters. In Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, we follow the story of Miles Morales, a student from Earth 1610. After being bitten by a radioactive spider, Miles gained the usual Spider-Man abilities, along with a few unique powers of his own, such as invisibility and bioelectrokinesis. Later, Aunt May gave Miles a new pair of web shooters, which he used throughout his final battle against Kingpin. During this fight, Miles's webs started to glow blue when they were infused with his bioelectricity. In the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, we are introduced to Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man of the year 2099. Despite his comic counterpart being able to shoot organic webs, this version of the character relies on tech-based webbing capable of curving and splitting into multiple streams. However, it's important to note that the device on Miguel's wrist is not a web shooter, but an interdimensional device used to travel between universes. The webbing itself is most likely fired from his futuristic suit or from advanced hidden web shooters integrated into his wrists. Most members of the Spider Society are also shown to have their own unique variations of web shooters, ranging from web shotguns and photonic web shooters to even giant robots. Insomniac web shooters. In the Insomniac Games, both Peter and Miles built their own black and red web shooters, which players could use throughout the game to swing through the city with smooth, fluid animations and take down enemies. The games also featured a variety of webs that players can craft for combat, such as impact webs, electric webs, and web bombs. This extra layer of customization allowed players to create unique and creative ways to defeat enemies, which made each fight feel fresh and enjoyable. In Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Peter's webs turned black after he bonded with the symbiote. However, even though the symbiote changed their color, it didn't produce the webs on its own, as Peter was unable to use them when his web shooters malfunctioned. Comics web shooters. Despite Spider-Man being on the verge of being bitten at the end of Marvel Zombies, we don't see him get infected on screen. But in the comics, we get to see that transformation unfold. After turning into a zombie and killing the people he loved the most, Spider-Man stopped using traditional webbing to swing across the city. Instead, he started using his own veins and arteries, a method that caused him immense pain and gave comic book readers some of the most disturbing panels in the series. In another iconic story, Dr. Octavius finds himself taking on the mantle of Spider-Man after switching bodies with Peter Parker. Although Octavius initially struggled with his new role, he did everything in his power to prove that he was the superior Spider-Man, starting by upgrading Peter's gadgets. He created a new web fluid formula that made his webs more durable and bulletproof, while also adding new features to his web shooters, such as built-in cameras and sonar sensors to improve navigation. In most comics, Spider-Man is portrayed as the kind-hearted hero who saves the day, but not every Spider-Man is so heroic. In the What If comic series, we explore an Earth where Spider-Man became a highly trained assassin and used a new web shooter design that shot bullets instead of webbing. We got to see another bullet-using Spider-Man in an alternate reality where Peter Parker became the Punisher. After realizing that he needed better equipment to deal with superhuman villains like the Green Goblin, Peter developed a chain gun magazine that fit into his web shooter and loaded it with different types of ammunition, such as armor-piercing, explosives, and incendiary rounds. During the Amalgam Comics event, the Marvel and DC universes briefly merged, resulting in the creation of characters like Spider-Boy, the fusion of Spider-Man and Superboy. Instead of carrying the usual wrist web shooters, Spider-Boy wielded a pistol that fired synthetic webbing, which he used both to swing around the city and take down enemies. Bonus: in Spider-Man 3, which was the final film in Sam Raimi's trilogy, Venom was able to shoot his own variation of webbing without having to rely on web shooters, thanks to the symbiote copying Peter's DNA during the time it bonded with him.